Coming up on First at 4, lawmakers and advocates meet to discuss more funding for housing following last July's historic flood. Plus, a push is being made by both parties to change marijuana laws nationwide.
And while we do have more showers on the way, we've also got mild temperatures to look forward to. The latest coming up as First at 4 continues.
Mountain News First at 4 continues.
There is still a tremendous need for housing here in eastern Kentucky. Last summer's flooding damaged or destroyed thousands of homes. Advocates for housing improvements met with lawmakers in Frankfort today. WYMT's Phil Pendleton has more on what was said at the state capitol.
Housing advocates say there's a shortage of about 78,000 affordable rental units in the state of Kentucky. They say that the housing situation was already really bad when there were tornadoes in western Kentucky and widespread flooding in eastern Kentucky, and basically an already bad situation was made a lot worse.
I went through the house and found all my furniture turned upside down. And
Terry Thies is among those whose lives were turned upside down after the July flood. Her home was so badly damaged, she said she had to take out a mortgage on a new home. The first time she's ever had to do that in her life. Housing advocates say so many others have it worse off. Many are still living in travel trailers and don't know when they will find permanent housing again. They say an emergency allocation trust fund of $300 million will go a long way.
Screams to me, I can't think of a policy that's more important than investing in affordable housing for eastern Kentucky.
The A Heart for Housing group says they are also pushing a bill that would make it easier for some of the homeless to receive identification, to get them IDs. They say that could be a life changer for many in that community. In Frankfort, Phil Pendleton, WKYT.
The organization says homelessness is experienced by at least 4,000 Kentuckians on any given night in January each year. Yesterday, Harlan County Schools urged local businesses to keep e-cigarettes away from youth. They are one of multiple school districts seeing an alarming problem with underage vaping. Today, Jeremy Toms talked to a Kentucky nonprofit about their concerns with minors using the product.
In the past week, 2 Kentucky school districts have addressed serious issues when it comes to children using e-cigarettes. Harlan County Schools sent out a letter calling it an ever-growing problem and noted that 8 Knox County children suffered serious problems as a result of vaping across 3 schools.
You could go to any school in this state and they'll have a drawer that they can show you full of confiscated vaping.
Ben Chandler leads Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky and says this is of real concern because children are getting addicted and it can have long-term effects.
Up to the time you're 25 years old, your brain is still developing, and you put nicotine in the mix and it's going to harm you.
The CDC says nicotine can harm the developing adolescent brain, affecting parts of it that control attention, learning, and mood. In their letter, Harlan County Schools notes that these children say they're getting products from convenience stores, so they're urging local businesses to move them behind the counter. But Chandler proposes creating more accountability for where these vapes end up.
What we need to fix this problem, one of the things we need is to get anybody who sells vapes to be licensed so that we can track the sale of the vapes and try to snuff it out at its source.
In Lexington, Jeremy Toms, WYMT Mountain News.
Chandler also called for a ban on flavored vapes, which he says draws more young people into using the products.
A few high clouds moving back into the picture as we head into our Tuesday evening. We'll continue to see pretty nice conditions, though. Until then, plenty of sunshine, mid-50s out there. The view from UVA-wise, some of those wavy clouds working on it. I think we may be on track for a pretty nice sunset throughout the region. Traffic camera at 64 in Moorhead would show you sunshine if we had it loaded up. Low to mid-60s out there right now for many locations. We'll continue to see a clean sweep locally. Most of the activity onto our north and east. our north and west and our south and east as we head through this evening. But those clouds will continue to increase as we watch a warm front move into the picture. As we head a little bit later on tonight, lows are mild, middle and upper 40s tonight with those scattered showers working back in for a time. But then we've got some very warm air on the way. Those details in a few minutes. Steve?
All right, Evan, thank you. In a moment of sudden cardiac arrest, every minute counts towards saving a life. In Kentucky, there are no laws on the book that require life-saving devices like automated external defibrillators. That could change with legislation filed in the House. In the wake of Damar Hamlin's collapse during a football game last month, the conversation about sudden cardiac arrests and having life-saving devices nearby has gained national attention. Under the legislation introduced today, Kentucky middle and high schools would be required to have easy access to an AED on athletic fields and school-sanctioned events. Schools would also be required to have an emergency action plan with hands-on rehearsals at the start of each sports season.
And I think until something tragic, unfortunately, happens, sometimes these important issues don't rise to the level that they should. And you know, we're very happy that Damar Hamlin's case turned out the way it does. I think it just illustrates the importance of having an AED and an emergency action plan in place.
2 Kentucky families who lost their sons to sudden cardiac arrest have been advocates for awareness and raising money for AEDs. The bill has bipartisan support as lawmakers say it all comes down to saving lives. The Sudden Cardiac Arrest Foundation says just 20 states require AEDs at schools. Lawmakers want to clear the federal hurdles that remain after states legalize marijuana. WYMT Washington News Bureau reporter Jamie Bittner explains why it will not be easy to get that legislation to the president's desk.
Most of the United States has legalized marijuana in some form. Now lawmakers from both parties agree the next step is to change national laws.
Treat it like we treat alcohol. Let states legalize, regulate, and tax.
Oregon Representative Earl Blumenauer wants to pass a package of bills to make things easier for states that legalize cannabis.
The federal government has a stranglehold on certain key elements.
That's because federally marijuana remains illegal. It's defined as a Schedule I drug which has no medical use and a high potential for abuse. The scheduling status keeps legitimate marijuana businesses from using services like banks.
The federal government denies state legal cannabis businesses full banking services, which basically puts a bullseye on the back of small local dispensary operators.
The House of Representatives has passed the safe banking measure 7 times, and it has bipartisan support. But in the Senate,
we'd pass legislation and it would go to Mitch McConnell's hospice to die.
The House is always blaming the Senate for something, doesn't it seem like that? But in this case, there is some accuracy to it.
Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky is one of the Republicans who supports the Safe Banking Act, but he says it's Democrats who missed their opportunity to pass it.
I think it's good legislation. It's been out there for several years, and this year it never ended up passing, and I think primarily because Senator Schumer chose not to bring it up. People like me who would have helped it pass, it was never allowed to come to the floor, and I think had it come to the floor as an individual bill, I think it could have passed, and I still think it would pass.
It's unclear if any marijuana legislation would pass the House now with a slim Republican majority, but Blumenauer believes he has enough bipartisan support. He tells me, quote, "This may be the Congress that may finally do its job." In Washington, I'm Jamie Bittner.
The long pause on federal student loan payments is set to end later this year. That means millions of former students will have to begin or resume paying those student debt bills in just months. The moratorium on payments began under former President Trump in March of 2020 at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Then President Biden continued it. Right now, it is possible student loan payments won't restart until August. When payments do start back up, it will be the first time many former students have to pay their debt. It comes as we wait to see if President Biden's big student debt forgiveness plan survives legal challenges. Coming up on First at 4, trying to hire a dog walker is getting harder and more expensive. We'll take a look at why dog owners are paying more to get their pups some exercise.
And yet more showers on the way for parts of this work week. The details on when they move in and how high those temperatures could go in just a minute.
No gear,